School Board meeting tonight. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Number 1, adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Laurel, second by Joe. Any other discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Going on to number 2, would you please, will you please join us with Don Carini doing the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please join.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to number 3, Superintendents Reports. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Nice to be with you this evening. We have some special guests with us tonight. I would like to invite Angela Golic, who's a teacher at Carson High School and also one of the sponsors for the Future Business Leaders of America, to come forward and along with her students. Welcome.
Is this new? Like, this is the first time we've ever done this?
Yeah.
Where's my podium?
And the mics move.
Okay.
And
look at
if
that.
the green
This
light
is technology.
on, you're on.
I'm on. Okay.
You don't have to hold it.
I don't have to hold it?
Not the button.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm glad there's not many people here tonight. Yes, I'm Angela Golic. This is my 16th year at Carson High School and probably my 9th year with FBLA, the Future Business Leaders of America. The Future Business Leaders of America, for anyone that doesn't know, is the largest career student business organization in the world with over 230,000 student members. In April, I took almost 40 students of FBLA students from Carson High to the state competition in Las Vegas. And at the state competition, we had 19 students that qualified for nationals. Cost reasons and vacations and things like that, I ended up only taking 9 of them to San Antonio, Texas this summer, where 9 of them competed in the national competition amongst 10,000 other FBLA students from all 50 states, including Canada, Haiti, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. While we're there, we have a great time. We get to see some sites. Nevada FBLA, the entire organization of Nevada FBLA stayed in a hotel right on the Riverwalk. So if you've ever been to San Antonio, it was wonderful. And we had really mild temperatures, probably high 80s, not too bad humidity. We really felt like we lucked out. So we got to see some fun things, and the kids got to compete in their events, and they got to go to some workshops as well, put on by national speakers and whatnot. It was a really great trip. I'm going to invite each one of them to quickly tell them who these are. Some of the kids, 6 of the 9 that went to nationals. I'd like them to introduce themselves, tell you what event they participated in, and then I'll just say one more brief thing after they're finished.
Can I hold it?
If you want to, you can just pass it down.
Hi, I'm Abby Golic. I'm a junior at Carson High. I'm also enrolled in the WNC Jumpstart program, and I competed in broadcast journalism with Michaela and one other member who isn't here.
I'm Michaela Mueller, and I'm also a junior, and I'm also in the WNC Jumpstart program. I also did the broadcast journalism.
Hi, I'm Kiana Martinez, and I'm a senior this year at Carson High, and I competed in hospitality management with my partner, Chloe Walt, who isn't here.
Hi, my name is Carlos Torres. I'm going to be a junior this year at Carson High. Well, I am a junior this year at Carson High. I competed in the business communication event at Nationals and at state. I was state champion for Nevada.
My name is Sam Nichols, and at Nationals and State, I competed in Introduction to Public Speaking, and I won first at State.
Hi, my name is Hiba Sayeda, and I'm a junior, and I competed in Introduction to FBLA.
Someone's nervous. This is sweaty. You guys are going to want to clean these. I'd like to just add... I'd like to add a little special note. First of all, to have all of these guys back this year is going to be wonderful. I'm expecting a really exciting year in FBLA. Kiana is our vice president. Carlos is an officer. Abby's an officer. So we have a couple of our officers up here as well. I want to add about HEBA that in the 8 years of doing FBLA and taking students to nationals, in the history of FBLA at Carson High, because it existed before I came along, I'm not sure how anything existed before me, but in the history of Carson High, we've never had anybody place at nationals. And what I mean by placing is in the top 10, if you're a top 10 placer, then you get called to the big stage, huge stage in front of 10,000 students to accept an award. HEBA placed 10th, and this is the first time for Carson High to have someone place top 10. So, yay. It's really exciting. So thank you also for the support from our former principal who gave us support all year long, both moral support and financial support, and I look for continued support from the school district. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I'd just like to congratulate you all, especially 10th place. That's just awesome. And Angela, all the time that you give to our students that is out of the classrooms, we really do appreciate it. And you've grown a great program here, and we appreciate that too. But now that you guys have all been to nationals, we expect at least 10th place next year. So we got the bar here. So we'll see you back here with your medals. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations and good luck.
Madam President, members of the board, I just have one other item. I believe at our last meeting, I let you know that our new state superintendent, Joan Ebert, has established a calendar to conduct some listening tours around all of the districts. And our date for that is September 24th. And so I was hoping that you might just put that on your calendars if you would like to participate. She has asked that I try to set up a time for trustees in that time frame for you to have a chat with her. So I'll give you more detail as that date gets closer. Thank you, and that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Moving on to board reports, we have brand new reps, and we're so glad you guys are here. We'll start out with Abby from Pioneer.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Here are some events going on at Pioneer High School this month. We have the Rock Creek camping trip that started today, August 27th through Friday, August 30th. This trip, students spend 3 nights and 4 days in Quincy, California. Students will participate in different outdoor activities to encourage group bonding and overcome fears. And this is one of the favorite trips of our year. Pioneer High School Picture Day is on September 5th. And then this is a new activity that we're having. It's called Rise Up Panthers, which will be on Friday, September 6th at 6:30 a.m. And we will enjoy the early morning sunrise. We have snacks and t-shirts that we get for going. And then finally, we have our open house on September 17th for parents and students to come and explore the school and meet the teachers. And that's held from 6 to 8 p.m. And thank you.
Thank you, Abby. You did great. You're going to be a pro. Going to our next school board representative from Carson High, Ginger. Welcome.
Hi. Oh, I'll move it closer. As everyone should know, school just started up. I feel, everyone is doing really good and adjusting to the new school year good. It's going good with that. We have school pictures Wednesday and Thursday, so tomorrow and the next day. And then Friday morning, we have senior sunrise, which is where all the seniors go early in the morning and watch the sunrise on the football field. And then there's breakfast refreshments, and they vote on the senior song and senior shirts. And then fall sports are starting up, going good. There are cross country, football, girls golf, tennis, volleyball, and soccer. Different sport teams are starting to compete or have competed already. On September 9th at 6 p.m., we have our open house for all the parents to come meet the teachers and walk through the kids' schedules. And then we have for homecoming week, which is September 16th through the 21st with the dance on the 21st. We have candidate voting open, so homecoming queen and king. And the spirit week before the dance is Disney themed. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. Richard?
Got a real short report tonight. I was able to attend the back-to-school night at Carson Middle School on the 14th. I gotta say, it was chaotic with all the kids and everything, but the staff did a very good job. It was very well organized. Everybody's flowing real well, and the kids were having fun and running around and checking all their lockers and trying everything. So it was a really good event. And then the only other thing I have is that on the 28th of this month, which is just a couple of days away from now, Boardwalk Bray, they're having their back-to-school night from 5:30 to 7:30, and they would like all the parents and guardians to attend and meet the teachers. And that's really all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Laurel?
So I was able to attend the back-to-school night at PreK Elementary School. It was for parents and guardians only, and it was good to, I mean, I've been at the school now for 13 years straight, so I kind of know it, but it was good to see some familiar faces back there. Mr. Williams is back teaching in the classroom, and Mrs. Mrs. Carey is back from the middle school teaching again at PreK. So it was kind of fun to have them back. For Fremont Elementary School, coming up, mark your calendar, September 13th is the fall calendar or carnival and grand opening at 5:30. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Lupe.
Okay, so per Mr. Stokes' email, we wish the principal from Mark Twain well. I understand she had surgery, so we hope that she is recovering. And then at Empire Elementary School, just a friendly reminder that we're having the ribbon cutting of the 2 new murals this coming 30th of August at 9 a.m. So I hope that you guys are able to join us. And that concludes my report.
Joe?
Yeah, just a couple of things for the high school. Leadership, there's openings for sophomore and junior class representative. So if you're interested, applications are available in room 266, and they're due to Mrs. Britt by Thursday, August 29th, so not a lot of time. Robotics team, first meeting is tomorrow during lunch. Senior projects, if you're interested in a career-related senior project, right now they have healthcare, banking, finance, and law enforcement, and you can check with your English class teacher for more information about those. But if you want to learn about a potential career choice, you can use your senior project to possibly do that. So I think that's a nice opportunity. And then there's an ACT, SAT weekend boot camp, or boot camps will be starting up, and you can get information about those from the guidance office. And that concludes my report.
Don?
I also attended Seeliger Elementary, the open house last Thursday, and got a chance to talk to new vice principal, Rod Butler. And great turnout there, well organized. Everybody was excited, of course. It's elementary school. And fun fact, has nothing to do with anything. Rod Butler played golf in college. Did you know that? Just throw that out there.
For a while.
Oh, was he? Okay. I didn't know that. Couple things. I also had the robotics team, and just to add to that, tomorrow at lunch in the tech center in Mr. Barham's room. If you're interested, it's not too late to join the robotics team. And then Saturday, September 7th, they have their first Tech Challenge kickoff in Reno. And then lastly, the first opening home football game. And that has actually been changed to Thursday, September 5th. It's been on the schedule for Friday, so put that down. It's actually on the 5th. And I'm not sure why. Rumor had it that it might be on local TV. It's the opener against McQueen, And it's also the debut of the Blue Thunder Marching Band, of course. And hopefully, hope for the best on the field, but I don't know if you know this, the marching band, they're undefeated. The band, they always win. So that concludes my report.
They did win many awards last year, too. I attended the Fritsch open house, too. Little confusion with a lot of the new parents. They didn't understand why they were having an open house without having the kids there. So maybe they can do a little bit more promoting that the meet and greet was when you bring your kids.
Not all the teachers did a meet and greet, so, and that was a new thing this year, was not having the kids there.
Right. So that was just a little, I heard a lot of flack from that one, but the teachers really like being able to talk one-on-one with the parents without the kids there. I had a parent engagement council meeting today, and Carson was acknowledged in that meeting for the work that Carrie Pryor's doing with her family engagement credits to get our people up to speed, to the point where the president or the chairman of the commission wants to send out a letter congratulating her and telling the rest of the districts what we're doing. And so I have to warn her that she might be getting phone calls there from people that want to do it too. And then the NIAA meeting that was scheduled for the 9th and 10th has been moved, and we won't know the exact dates. It's either going to be 23rd, 24th, or 25th. But because of the impending maybe teacher strike is why they are moving that meeting. And realignment will be addressed again at that meeting. So if anybody has any comments or things for that, let me know. And that would conclude my report, except one more thing. We forgot last meeting to thank the custodial staff, especially at Mark Twain and Fremont. They had a huge busy summer, and they did a really good job getting everything ready for us to open, and we do appreciate their hard work. So, seeing that, do you have anything for NASB? Oh, Richard.
I would just like to clarify, the Mordwick event is tomorrow night, the 28th, not a couple days from now. Since I've been retired, I kind of lose track of time, so I apologize.
Every day is Saturday.
Every day is Saturday, so.
Rub it in.
Right? Laurel, do you have anything for NASB?
No, just I think you and Mike are the only ones going to the training in September. And that's the only current thing I have from them.
And then there's only one county that didn't put in any nominations for awards, so I'm not sure what county that is yet, but I'll let you know when I know. Okay, moving on to number 5 then, association reports. Loretta.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, administration, and Renee. I contemplated coming up. I'm tired. Beginning of the school year, it's like kindergartners, oh my gosh. Anyway, just a reminder that on Saturday, CESA's going to be having a special meeting at the Round Table Pizza on North Side. And Dr. Delphin and AJ are going to be there to answer any questions or concerns about our restructuring classification, maybe to confuse them some more, I don't know. But anyway, I just want to let everyone who is a ESP classified employee, you're all welcome to come and attend to find out any information that you're not quite sure about. So, thank you.
What time is that going to be?
It's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matters within the authority of this board. Please note the public comment will be taken on items marked for possible action before action is taken on such items, and members of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time that they are being considered. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such a matter until the matter is placed on the agenda for the board. In making public comment, speakers are asked to come to the table, speak into the microphone, state their name for the record. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes and simply not repeat comments of others. And I do have one person that signed up. Is Naomi Gomez here? Gonzalez. Sorry. Yep, come on up.
Push the button. Alrighty. Okay, so my name is Naomi Gonzalez. and this is my first time here. I actually saw that your guys' meeting today was regarding the pre-K program funding. My concern, or guess, or question is basically I just want to get some clarification, more information regarding how it works in the sense of there was an incident that happened for the first day of school for my daughter. And when I called the school, they informed me that that program has nothing to do with the school. And then Department of Transportation for the buses has nothing to do with them and that they don't communicate at all. My daughter was 35 minutes late coming home. I wasn't informed about it. We kind of were just like, where the heck is the bus? Where is everybody? Like, what's going on? Call the school, of course. They tell me that. All they kept repeating to me, including the principal and the 2 assistants, was just the fact that it's a grant-funded program. So I'm like, okay, what is that supposed to mean? Where is my daughter? So basically, I just want to get clarification on how that procedure works of the communication between the Fremont school. I want to know if that program is just being a program used in that facility only and has nothing to do with them, or how does it work, and how does transportation work in that relaying information? I seem to have gone further up the chain, but seem to not get information besides, a slap on the hand for certain employees, and that was it. But not necessarily information, who do I go to, then what information do I need to have in my contacts in case this were to happen again? Who do I first call to get any information regarding this? And that's why I'm here. I don't know if, that's something for this. I don't know if it's just for the funding, but I saw it and I'm just here. I just want to get information. I don't know if I need to see somebody who runs the program that can clarify exactly how it works related to the school, Fremont especially, because I figured that it all works as one system because it's all for education. So it's just confusing, and I just want clarification because I don't want this to happen again because it will be a bigger issue then. And that's just my biggest thing. So that's why I'm here. She's pre-K, and then my older one's first grader. I'm new to this, new to the whole school scene, trying to learn and get information. So that's basically why I'm here, and I hope to get some answers. If not, at least get my contact information down and later let me know, or if I have to set a meeting somewhere else or meet with other people, who exactly it is that I need to meet to get the information I need for this not to happen and for me to be informed. Because of course, kids, every student, safety should be first in every school, and communications should be key no matter what, especially with parents. We're in this day and age where technology is number one thing. There's apps, teachers, we download. I did it with my older daughter in kindergarten. Just a notification at least. 15-minute delay, understandable. 35 minutes, no, I'm sorry. That is ridiculous. So that's kind of why I'm here, and I just hope somebody can help me.
We'll definitely find somebody to help you. We appreciate you coming. I know it's frustrating, and especially with a 4-year-old, that's just scary. Any time off the clock, and don't think that me telling you to go see Mr. Stokes is us taking it off our plate because we don't think that safety is number one issue in this district. So I'm going to put you in touch with Mr. Stokes.
I already have been in touch with him.
So he should be able to give you some contact numbers for people.
Okay.
And if you have any other trouble from there, you feel free to come back or contact me or whatever we can do, because there seems to be that there's a breakdown in communication somewhere. And so I'm glad that you brought it to our attention at the beginning. We would hate for this to keep going on.
Exactly.
And we will find out where we go from here. And if you're one parent that doesn't have contact information, that means there's other parents that don't. So we will definitely get that going. So because with 4-year-olds, well, with any child, but especially 4 and 5-year-olds, that's tough.
It is.
I can't even. I freaked out 10 minutes after my kids leave the house. So
Exactly.
I completely understand. But I appreciate you coming and bringing this concern to our attention, and we'll have Mr. Stokes get back with you and get exactly what you need. And if you don't get it relied, then come back, or we'll figure out some way to get to where we need to get so there's not that communication gap.
Alrighty. And then just also, who actually runs the program? Not the funding necessarily, but the actual program. Is there a contact information you can give me now at this moment so I can have that contact information?
I think so, Mr. Stokes.
We have with us Dr. Laura Austin, who oversees the program, and so
She's right behind you.
Ms. Gonzalez, Mrs. Dr. Austin is there.
Okay.
You guys can certainly trade cards or telephone numbers. and
Definitely.
You can do that
Yeah.
before you leave.
And I can't actually stay for the whole meeting. I have to go pick up my daughters. But I would definitely I would take that card and communicate with you. Right? Well, thank you.
Thank you
for the time.
Good day for you to come. You get the contact
Right?
information
I
right
know.
now. So
Perfect.
we do appreciate it, and we don't blame you for wanting not to stay. The high school students didn't want to either. Any other public comment? Seeing none, moving on to number.
Hold on.
Oh, come on up. I'm sorry. State your name for the record.
For the record, my name is Samuel Lair with the Kenny Gwynn Center for Policy Priorities. I'll keep mine short and sweet. I just want to inform everybody that the Gwynn Center is attempting to increase our outreach to other counties and communities outside of the greater Clark County and Washoe County School District areas. So with that, we're going to be trying to be attending more board meetings also for Carson City, but also Lyon and all these other places as well. We just want to iterate that the Gwynn Center is happy to be a active member of the community, and we hope that we can provide very useful and data-driven and nonpartisan contributions to the discussion around especially education. So if anybody would like my card, I am the Northern Nevada representative. I'm just a research associate, although I'm sure most of you know, most of our board of directors and most of our senior staff assistants are down in Clark County. But we're attempting to do a little bit more outreach. That's why I'm here today. So is there anything that you think that we could be a benefit on, or whatever discussion you think we could have, or background information we might be able to provide, we'll be happy to do so. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming. The Gwynn Center is just amazing, the results and the data that they've acquired, especially during the legislature, and the way they communicate it out through social media and the news outlets has been very nice too, so that we can all keep up with it. So we appreciate them thinking about coming up north and remembering there's the rest of the state. So we could trade cards and you can call me and set up whatever and we'll get you going.
Yeah, definitely.
We
It's my pleasure. I just
we
realized I
appreciate it.
didn't press that right the first time, but thank
All
you.
right. Any questions for Sam? No? Okay. Thanks, Sam. Moving on to number 7, informational update on the pre-K program in Carson City School Districts to include funding sources for the 2019-2020 school year. Dr. Austin and Ms. Fushon, welcome. And Ms. Winder.
Good evening, and Dr. Lennox will also be joining us.
Okay.
Good evening, President Wilkie, members of the board, Superintendent Stokes, and district administration. I am Laura Austin, and I am the Title III Director for the English Learner Program for the Carson City School District, and I also have the responsibility of managing the school district's pre-K grant, not to be confused with the special education pre-K at Student Support Services, although we do partner. So, and that's pretty awesome. So I do have a PowerPoint to share with you, and if that might be a little clicker that I could advance with that. It is brief. My understanding of my presentation today was there was to be a focus on funding, but I'm happy to, of course, answer any questions that you may have along the way or afterwards. So we'll get started. It'll come alive here, I think. There we go. So I wanted to start off with some research. Why pre-K? Research indicates that early experiences impact the formation of learning pathways that influence language, cognitive, and social skill mastery. There is clear evidence that high-quality preschool programs benefit young children's development, both concurrently and into the future. The achievement gap that exists between children coming from families with low and middle-high incomes can be seen as early as 18 months, so early intervention has proven to be very impactful. And high-quality early care and education play an important role in preparing children for success and lead to higher levels of educational attainment, career advancement, and earnings. And by age 8, most children in the United States at this time are not on track in cognitive knowledge and skills, and many lag in the areas of social and emotional growth, physical well-being, and engagement in school. So a little bit of research about why pre-K. What you're going to see is that the program is not inexpensive. And so we have to be sure that what we're doing is impactful and being done as in a high quality way as possible. So what I have done here, and I apologize in advance if this seems confusing, because we're talking about funding, is I'm giving you in about 3 slides a chronology of how our pre-K program has grown, but also how it's been funded. And because it's, as I said, it's not cheap. And so I think the school district, as board members, you probably want to know how we are braiding funding and where the funding is going that we do receive. So in 2002, which happens to be the first year I was in this district, I was assistant principal at Mark Twain at the time, but in 2002, we received for the first time what was called a state early childhood grant, and you'll see in that second to the right column the funding source. And it's an early childhood education grant, and it was at Empire and Mark Twain. There was 1 classroom at each school. It had each classroom had 2 half-day sessions. So there were 2 sessions at a school, and there were 20 students in a session. So we had 40 students at Mark Twain and 40 students at Empire between 2002 and 2013. That's a long time. 11 years, that's what we did. So when we talk about pre-K, we've been doing this a long time, and we're good at it. However, it has grown and has had many requirements put on us that are new to us, and we're trying some new things. So there's always room for improvement in those areas. Just at the far right, in the middle there, inclusion model, was it emphasized or required? By that I mean the inclusion of students with IEPs. It was not emphasized, it was not required, but it was encouraged, of course. And the far right, both those schools received that program because they were Title I schools, and our own Valerie Dockery was the one who wrote that grant and saw it implemented. In 2013, which is the year before, actually, the school year before I became involved with the program, we received more funding that we used toward pre-K. So if you look to the funding sources column, you see SB 405 added. And if you look down to the 2-star asterisk, SB 405 was the first time that the legislature ever designated funding specifically for programs and services for English learners. And it was a good amount. And we also call it Zoom. You're going to see that amongst the grants. So Zoom money was added to the state early childhood. And what was decided at that time was that Empire and Mark Twain would each add a classroom, and Bordewick-Bray would add a classroom. Now, with that, it was still 2 half-day sessions at Empire, 2 half-day sessions at Mark Twain, and 1 classroom at Bordewick's, and so 2 half-day sessions in that classroom. All told, there were 80 students accommodated at Empire, 80 at Mark Twain, and 40 at Bordewick, because the half-day sessions, 20 plus 20 equals 40, times 2 teachers is 80. The inclusion model, was it emphasized or required? No, not generally. However, the Bordewick-Bray program was created such that it was very progressive. It was very forward-thinking. The idea being that there would be a classroom teacher, a general ed pre-K teacher, and a special ed early childhood teacher who would partner with a paraprofessional one and a special ed para. And the class would be a mix of IEP, students with IEPs, and students without IEPs. So in that third to the right column, was in the inclusion model emphasized and required? The answer there is yes, it was. So it was the start of things. So there you'll see in the funding, it was state early childhood funding, SB 405 for the additional classrooms, and IDEA funding, because the special ed, of course, personnel was still being paid for through IDEA. And you'll see that they were all Title I schools that were benefiting from this programming. Which brings us to the last 2 years. So that was 2013 to 2017. So 2 years ago, almost 3, in 2017, we received an actual visit from the Nevada Department of Ed. Anna Severance is our pre-K liaison there. And she was wondering why we had not availed ourselves of the federal PDG funding, and that was the pre-K development grant. So you'll see that, the 4 asterisks down there at the bottom. So PDG, pre-K development grant, required that you grow your program, so you had to increase classrooms from what you had, and you had to go full day. And it came out 3 years before we availed ourselves of it. It was a 5-year opportunity, and we came in year 4. So at that point, the discussion was had with district administration, and it was decided, yes, we were ready to try this. So there we were, and I'll just go through, if you don't mind, a little bit laboriously here, but we still had the Bordwick Bray classroom. That did not change. However, what changed was it became full day. So instead of, it still was 1 classroom, but instead of 2 half-day sessions, there was 1 full-day session. And the grant required that we could not go over 20 students. So we were limited to the 20. Inclusion model emphasized required, yes, and you'll see the yeses all the way down. That was one of the requirements, was that every classroom needed to have, it fluctuates between 4.7 and I think it's 4.7%, it could be as high as 8% per classroom, need to be students with IEPs. However, you cannot go over 49% of the students with IEPs. So you can have 9 students out of the 20 with an IEP, and you have to have as many as 3, I think it's between 3 and 4, a minimum of 3 and 4. So yes, inclusion model was emphasized and required. At that time, we had to grow in order to get the funding. So we grew in the direction of a community partnership, which was, and I've spoken about that, I know, but here before, it was encouraged by the grant to look to make community partnerships, which we did successfully with Boys and Girls Club for 2 years. So that was another classroom of 20 students. Empire still had its 2 classrooms, but they went full day. So we reduced accommodating 80 students to 40. Same with Mark Twain, 80 students to 40. And then Fremont actually had 1 number of classrooms. That really should say 1 there. That's an error. It should say 1 classroom, and there was 20. So it's 140 total. So I will fix that when I give you a copy of this. I'll send you a copy. So Fremont had 1 classroom accommodating 20. The other thing, with that said, we have 7 classrooms accommodating 20 max. Our final number in concrete is 140 students. We cannot have 141. So that's important to know. On the far right, the other, Bordwick Bray, a Title I school, Boys and Girls Club was open zoned with primarily Seeliger students attending. Empire, Title I school, Fremont, Title I school, and Mark Twain, Title I school with Fritch students attending. And that's how we did it for the previous 2 years.
Dr. Austin?
Yes.
I apologize if you said it, but when they're encouraging us or requiring us to grow the program, why are they also capping us at the same time?
The capping per classroom. You could have as many classrooms as their funding would allow, but, once you have your
So it's
finite.
just a per classroom?
It's a per classroom,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
And you have to have 2 adults in the room. You cannot go below that 10-to-1 ratio. So this is our current year, FY20, although here I call it the 2019 school year. And you'll see that we've changed once again. So what has happened here is the federal pre-K development grant sunsetted. And the Nevada, not to go too deep into the weeds here, but the Nevada Department of Ed could not apply again for the grant for reasons that are federal reasons. So they needed to appeal to the legislature, and they knew this all of last year. It was common knowledge that it was going to be an appeal to the legislature for funding. They were very confident that we were going to get funded, and we were, but the funding changed, it shifted and it changed. So I'll describe that a little bit. So Bordewick Bray, still in existence, the classroom, one classroom, let's see if I got this right, one session, 20 students, yes, it's still inclusion. When you look at our funding sources, it's now called Nevada Ready Pre-K, and it's SB 467, which I failed to mention on the previous slide, was SB 390. Those are all English Learner Service Programming funding. So still involved in the pre-K funding. And then IDEA, and of course, Bordewick Bray, still a Title I school. Empire, same two classrooms, 40 students, and pretty much everything stayed the same there. Fremont, we added a classroom, so that's where my 2 came in. That is accurate. There are now 2 classrooms at Fremont. We took the Boys and Girls Club classroom, literally the same teacher, the same paraprofessionals, and moved them over to Fremont. With their new construction, they could accommodate that. So 2 full-day classrooms, 40 students, and Title I school, and then Mark Twain, full-day, 2 classrooms, 40 students, and Title I school, with the current funding listed there. What you will see perhaps lacking is that there is no accommodation, so to speak, for Seeliger students attending nor Fritch, unless they have an IEP or they are McKinney-Vento or foster family. So with that said, that was a decision that was made once we brought Fremont, we consolidated basically our locations. And we were also looking, and this was, I don't want to speak for the district, but these are discussions we had at the district level with the associate superintendent. We were also looking at STAR reports and where we needed to emphasize early intervention so that schools were most successful. So that's our history, and I will move on if there's no questions there.
Just a quick question with the Boys and Girls Club. Is there construction going on there, or was it construction at Fremont and Mark Twain?
Fremont's new construction allowed for them an open classroom so that they could bring in the pre-K.
Okay,
the
so
additional pre-K.
the classroom at the Boys and Girls Club, did we stop doing that because of lack of funding for the teachers, or is there something going on there?
Actually, I can't say exactly why, 100%, but one of the reasons we did it was because Fremont did have room, and Fremont needed more pre-K seats, and they are a Title I school, and their STAR report was such that they needed the emphasis on early intervention, and we did not have the funding to add a classroom, so we brought it on board to Fremont and made it part of the Fremont team.
Would the Boys and Girls Club be an option if we had additional funding for another classroom?
I would say yes, but of course that's a decision, but yes.
Yeah,
Yes, there was
possibility.
we had an MOU with them, you might recall, and it was left open. It was very, amicable, tears all around, with Darrell and the leadership over there. So we left on very good terms, I think. So just to kind of get back into the vernacular here, we have 7 classroom teachers, and actually that's 8, I should say 8, because we have a special ed teacher at Bordewick. We have 2 inclusion specialists who are paid for out of the IDEA money. And I do want Dr. Lennox to speak a little bit more to that in just a moment. All of our teachers are highly qualified. They have their K-8, they have their early childhood, and as applicable, they have their special ed early childhood. So they are a very, very well professional, I should say, group, and they're experts in their field, is what I'm trying to say. We have 10 highly qualified paraprofessionals. Of course, that's through our district hiring system, including 3 bilingual Spanish paraprofessionals. And at Bordewick Bray, we have the co-teach collaboration still happening between the regular education and special education teachers in the same classroom. That's really a state-of-the-art room there, and they have an additional special education paraprofessional, a para 4. So that's a kind of a summary of what we have right now. And I want to talk a little bit about who's in the room right now. As you heard our parent mention, today, this is the first week of pre-K, and we are still enrolling. There are some enrollment idiosyncrasies, which we could go on about the complexities of having centralized pre-K enrollment and 4 different sites and 140 children, and the special needs and the McKinney-Vento and the foster children. We coordinate with many offices to do that, including transportation, and normally it goes extremely smoothly. I'm really appreciate our teamwork in our district. So with that said, a decision that was made at the district level was that we would have 35 placements among the 140 would be reserved for students with IEPs. So that's right off the top. So I work with Dr. Lennox starting in March, and she's looking at 3-year-olds with a critical eye. No, she looks at her 3-year-old register plus their child find system, and we hold out for 35 spots for them. Also, we need, according to the grant, we need as many students to qualify on income it used to be the federal requirement, now it's the state requirement, that families meet the income requirement in order for us to be funded. So we don't get a per pupil from the state for a student with an IEP who doesn't qualify on income. So we ask those IEP students to submit, if they would be so kind, they don't have to, we ask them to submit their income because we get our per pupil, which I'll show you in just a minute. And of course, we need as much funding as possible. You saw the 8 teachers, the 10 paraprofessionals, the inclusion specialists, the bus and all that. So I'll get more into that in a little bit. So right now, we have 123 students who qualify on income. We're still waiting to hear, hopefully we will hear from 17 of the IEP families with students with IEPs. McKinney-Vento, we have 6 students at this time enrolled, and English learners, we have 44. And I want to make it very clear that the English learners are not prioritized in any way. That is a confusion that's out in the community, so I just want to be real transparent about how that works. They have to qualify on income as any other family does. And then also, we go first come, first served. So it's quite complex, it's color-coded, it's all kinds of, phone logs to make sure that we are taking families per school zone, however. So, 4 different waiting lists. But we do maintain a waiting list, first come, first served, and we do accept students first come, first served. If, and this is where the rub is, and we've talked about this before, if I don't have a student that has an IEP, if my own child does not have an IEP, and I don't qualify on income, there is no way that my child can attend the Carson City School District Pre-K program. And there are only 140 seats. I looked at our school district report for attendance for the first 2 days of school, and we have approximately, I want to say 560 kindergartners. So you figure last year they were all probably eligible for pre-K. So we are meeting the needs of perhaps, a little less than a fourth of what, maybe just 25% of what we could accommodate in terms of 4-year-olds in the community. So any question about that qualifying?
Yes, just a question, because the totals in the left column
Yes.
don't add up to 140, they're more. Are some of those
You can
students
see in
double qualification?
Yes, and you can see I wrote that number of students, they can be associated with more than one demographic. And excuse, I'm missing a parentheses there. So we could have a student who has an IEP, who qualifies on income, and is also an English learner. Yeah. But the total is dropped at 140. Yeah. So, and we are at capacity now. We have had a few students who are no-shows, so I want to be really transparent about that. You might hear in the next few days that we're going to the wait list, and I just told you that we're full, but we're full on paper, and a couple families have not shown or attended, so we're going to adjust as quickly as possible. I have a wonderful administrative assistant named Alicia Smith, and she is the one who helps us with all of that. Working very closely with Bianca Galliano, I just want to give full credit, and our school office staff. So here we have, this is the last slide, actually. I just want to make sure I'm accurate on that. I believe it is. Oh, no, I have one more. I have a fun one at the end. Fun, ha. Okay, fun for me. This is from our grants department. I have to thank our wonderful grants department. They guide me through every step of this pre-K process. And this first piece up here is something that, it doesn't seem to go. The multicolored section at the top, that was prepared by our grants office. But this strip at the bottom, that's actually from the report that told us what our funding was this year. So I wanted to show that to you because there's a few unknowns, even as all of our experts look at it, even our leader, Mr. Fueling, we have a few unknowns there, but the numbers are basically the numbers that we're getting. So if you look at the top, what grants did for me there is the bottom half is 2018-19 pre-kindergarten cost. And then the top is this year. And then they color-coded it by funding. So you'll see the yellow is state pre-K funds, and I'm just going to read to you. In 18-19, we had approximately $350,000 in state funds. This year, we have approximately $800,000 because the state took over the grants. One thing that's the difference between those two is that we had teachers. We paid, this year we're paying for more teachers out of the state than we did before because the federal paid for it before. The gray next to it, or the blue rather, those are the EL funds. Last year, it was approximately $98,000 came out of our EL service and program grant. And this year, almost $219,000 is coming out of our EL program and services grant. And I have to mention that because we have a K-12 program that has 1,100 English learners in it, and that entire grant is about $800,000. So a quarter of it is going toward 140 students, and do the math, 3/4 is going toward the other 1,100. And that is, I think that's just something that needs to be known, but it's not a value statement. I'm really, things aren't always, there's not always parity. The pre-K program is expensive, and just want to show, that's a good example of the expense. The bottom there, that big gray box says federal PDG funds. And a lot of things came out of there that was last year to the tune of $770,000. There was, and I'll read it to you, 7 teachers, pre-K classified sub-aid to help us with enrollment, teacher sub-days, teacher extra hours, an internal coach, supplies and equipment, and transportation. And then you look up above and there's a big white space because that grant doesn't exist anymore to cover those costs. And not only that, what surprised us in an unpleasant way was the state said transportation cannot be covered by the state grant, and nor could the internal coach. You met Casey Gillis last spring. We had such success with our QRIS rating. And and then the supplies and equipment, certainly we could budget that, but there just is no money for it. So we don't have any money in the pre-K right now for supplies and equipment. And that will come incidentally as needed out of the ESL money. That's what we'll have to do. If, for example, one of the teachers said, I'm out, I need some SFA replenishment of our basal curriculum. And of course, we're going to provide that. So we will go into the ESL funding for that. And then the federal IDEA funds, you'll see that's the bare minimum. There's so much more that special ed pays for that comes to mind now that I see this graphic. But the basic is the Bordewick teacher and para. And then if you look up above federal IDEA funds, you'll see that special ed is, the special education IDEA funding is also paying half of the transportation. So the English Learner Program and the special ed IDEA funding rather have split that transportation cost. And then the total budget you can see there in 2018-19, the total budget was 1.3 million, and this year is 1.1 million approximately. So it's a shift. The money shifted, and there were more costs coming out of different school district pots than before. The PDG grant was extremely generous. It allowed us to really try some things, and then when it was taken away, you do feel compelled to continue with those things. So for example, the internal coach, Mrs. Gillis, she will come on with EL Zoom funds, but at a reduced number of hours. So we adjusted there. That's just an example. And I did want to turn it over just for a moment to Dr. Lennox. And thank you for just a couple more minutes. We're almost done. Because I did want her to speak to the IDEA funding.
Good evening. How are you? So unlike the general ed pre-K funding, we don't have a cap. So we have child find every month, and it's typically about 9 students we screen, and then they come back if the team feels they need a full assessment. So for us, we have 35 slots out within the district, but we also provide for students when those slots are full. So we look to like reverse inclusion. So we have a classroom where we bring in some peers to try and stimulate some gen ed interaction. We've also have a partnership with Creativity Corner. They've been a wonderful community partner. We've bought 15 slots with them. We partnered last year. They are following Eckers. They're using the coach. Our SPED teachers and OTs, PTs go out there and support our kids within that setting. So that's a really nice thing we're able to do. So there's 15 slots there that we do purchase out of IDEA. Other things that we were able to support the district with is trainings. So last year we were able to bring in Dr. Christy Frautenzak, if I'm saying her name wrong, but anyway, she's a wonderful coach that comes in and teaches on inclusion, and we've been able to include the gen ed teachers and pairs as well. Our entire pre-K program is going up to Reno in September. We were able to pay for that training for them to go hear her speak again. There's an autism presenter on inclusion, so we're excited about that. And our team will be presenting on our approach to inclusion and some of the barriers that we're finding and how we've addressed them. So that's kind of how we're trying to support the district, and it's a nice benefit of our funds that we can support gen ed as well, but there is no cap for us. So we're always looking at, when kiddos come in, how do we set up in a program that's really beneficial and appropriate, and working with Laura and Dr. Austin and her staff. We just work really closely to create those environments for our kiddos.
So I just wanted to point out across the bottom, the magic numbers, that's where all the magic happens. From the Nevada Department of Ed, they sent us a letter, a memo, and it had this strand in it here telling us how we're getting paid. You'll see that the PDG, or I'll read it for you, what they did is they took the PDG grant, which we no longer have, and they added it to last year's state grant. They call that Nevada Pre-K on this form. And they added it, and they got a total of what our fiscal was for FY19. And then they took 4.15%, which I have to be very transparent, that's not explained to us why they did that. And they took a 4.15% off the top of all that. And then they said that our distribution based on that percentage was $803,480. That was broken down into the funded seats. Remember I said we have 140 seats? In our grant, we said we were going to seat 119 students who qualified on income, thinking some special ed would not qualify on income. So that isn't reflected there, but that's okay. It says that we're going to have 124 seats, and that fully funded, and then 9 additional, which is what happened last year. Last year, we had 119, and then we were fortunate to have 9 additional seats, more than what we had written into the grant. When you have more students than you anticipated qualifying on income, you get a higher per pupil. So I don't know what that, again, that works in our favor, so that's all right. So our average cost per that full day, what they call, and I shouldn't say full day, it should say fully funded. I'm convinced it should say fully funded, is 11,000 times the 9, and then the average seat cost for partial funding, okay, not day, is 5,600 times the 124, and it almost equals that 803,480 minus $35. So there you go. That is so clear, and I've talked to grants.
I didn't mean your explanation, I'm meaning their reasoning.
There's no real understanding on our part about the differential between the 124 and the 9 and the per pupil. But I think in all fairness to, and in all appreciation to the federal grant and now the state grant, they are trying to figure out a very fair way to distribute this money across the state. And so the only question I could actually on a one-to-one explain that much, again to you, I understand it, but we were never really explained why they took the 4% off. Maybe that's just, I'm not sure. I just wanted to share. My understanding of today's presentation was that there was a question about how we were funded. So I thought I would just give you the state's language.
So Tasha Fuson for the record. I also want to add that Dr. Austin did a great job putting this together, but that the impact is more reaching than this, because some of the funding that Dr. Austin had to take from her Zoom funds and reallocate to support pre-K meant that we had to find ways to then fund the other parts that were previously funded in Zoom. An example of that, for instance, is one of the ELL teachers at Carson High School this year is being funded by SB 178 funds for that school. So it took a lot of also background planning to figure out, well, if we have to take funding from Zoom to support this, then where do we take funding to support what's in place and what needs to try to keep the quality of the ELL program that we've been providing for our students. So it is, it's been frustrating. And Dr. Austin, actually listening to your presentation, I think I even understand funding better now. So thank you. You've done a great job. I can tell you that we've had numerous conversations, AJ included, all of us trying to wrap our heads around. So as I'm watching your faces and the confusion, I want you to know we feel your pain as well, because it's very difficult to even project based on the information that we've been given what future allocations we may receive from the state as well. So in terms of long-term programming or future programming, it's challenging to figure out what pre-K in Carson City School District might look like moving forward.
And I just have a question, kind of a comment, that the federal grant paid for transportation and requires income 200% poverty level. I don't know why the state would take away that transportation. Those are the families that don't have transportation. And then it's removed, and now we're using it from our special education funding. And then just because of the question with the busing, and I know that there is the special education bus and I'm only familiar with the student support services, but it does there's one bus for pre-K that picks up kids in all the cities, so it is a longer route. How is
Can I
that
speak to
working?
that?
Yes.
It's actually English learner money and IDEA money, and there are multiple buses. There are 3, but they do need to coordinate with the high school and middle school, just as elementary does, because the start time is the same. And then the dismissal time is 1:30, so that they can get those runs done clearly, so that they can then pick up the secondaries. So it's more than one bus. It is more than one bus. The concern the parent had is an interesting concern, and I don't mean to minimize it, but it's interesting to me on a lot of different levels, because we have a system, a program that's not in every school. There is a sense of removal from it. No matter how much you keep the schools in the loop, it's hard for them to keep it on their front burner, because some of it is deferred with a central enrollment process, and then some of it is an issue of students are attending the school who aren't zoned for the school, and I don't want to say there's confusion, because it works very smoothly, but there is, when there's a question, you would think, go to the principal, and it just doesn't sometimes happen. So it seems like maybe there is some in-service needed at the the site administration, with district administration, so that principals feel the license. Maybe they don't feel they have the license to make decisions like, by golly, there's a problem with the bus today. I'm gonna, take care of this like I would K-5 or 612, whatever. I think we need to make sure our principals feel knowledgeable and empowered. With that said, we give them list upon list upon list that has everything about these children except for how many fillings they have in their teeth, including the transportation piece and including all of the phone numbers and including. Again, it's a lot of information though, and they may get, I would say this time of year, a principal could easily receive 4, 5, 6, 7 lists, because there's always an update. That student's no longer in, this student is in. I think there's an impression that it's an ever-shifting target, maybe. So we need some more familiarization there.
The pre-K students ride 3 buses from 4 different school, right?
I don't know that it's 3. I would have to have Cherie. I could give that to you.
Because don't pre-K students need to have seatbelts because they can't ride the normal buses that the rest of the students?
Also, the buses are full, so there's a few different buses. There's at least 2, if not 3. And sometimes there's so many students that they have to go to, for example, Fremont once, and then go back and drop off the students with IEPs. This is how it was explained to me today by transportation. And then he goes out and the bus driver goes out and does another round of pickup for the students who don't have IEPs, who are also attending the same school, because they don't want to make the bus route too long for the children. So I'm really pleased that they're cognizant of that. And just as you'll recall, it's curbside service. So it's not a bus stop. It's in front of the home or the apartment building, and a responsible adult is out there. And same with the drop-off, responsible adult. I did speak with transportation today, as I normally do this time of year. How's it going? Any issues, any concerns? And there's just always the concern of not enough bus drivers and not enough routes. However, I asked if the bus drivers had contacted each family to set up the bus routes, because I was just wondering how that was going. And she said, yes, sometimes there are families whose voicemail box is full, now that we're cell phone oriented, or it's no longer functioning. So they still had some of those issues, but she said, yes, it's still their practice and procedure that the bus driver, just as we've always done with special ed, that the bus driver makes contact with the family to discuss the pickup time and the drop-off time, because truly only the bus driver knows that, since it's curbside service. So yes, it's definitely a complex program. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was just wondering, you said there's not enough supply money for the pre-K program?
Not this year.
Okay, so you're
although-
going to have to take the money out of somewhere else. Is there any problem with where you're going to take the money out of commingling funds?
No, they encourage braided funding because there's state grants. So it will be out of the English learner state grant money. I'm not taking it out of the federal money. The federal, we have Title III funding, rather small grant, and then we have the larger Zoom money. But yes.
So that expense would be allowable through that grant then?
Oh, absolutely. And also, English, one thing that will be accounted for, though, is they'll say how many English learners were impacted by this money. So this funding, I should say, not money, funding. So, it's going to get a little lopsided, 44 kids and, larger expenses. But it always passes muster, at least it has. And, yeah. And I just wanted to show you, so why do we do this? This is our state evaluation measure. It was required by the PDG grant, and now it's required by the state grant. It's the Brigance Early Childhood Screen, 3 to 5 years test, the form, and it's the average percentile growth for the previous school year. I don't have the post in this format yet from last school year, but I expect that it's going to be commensurate. So this is 17-18 school year. The Brigance test is a normed test. It's a one-on-one test given between the teacher and the 4-year-old, and it's a benchmarking of certain, I should say, it's a measurement of certain benchmarks in a child's development compared to their developmental age, comparing their developmental age to their chronological age. So in the areas of fine and gross motor skills, vocabulary, concepts, and social emotional growth, among other things. So it's a test, it's oral, and the student carries out certain activities with the assessor. So the you can see there, on the left-hand side, is given in the fall when the students first start, or as soon as the student enters, if they enter later in the year. And then the post is given in May. And you can see that the percentile growth is very high. So district-wide, we saw more than a doubling, a doubling and a half again, growth in the students' developmental age compared to their chronological. And this is what we seek to do, is to prepare students for kindergarten and, as needed, to close that achievement gap. Prepare them.
Have you noticed since we went to full day from half a day, have these numbers gone up?
We did not give the Brigance, we gave other tests, and they've always been positive. So one thing we know is early childhood is great. Whatever you do something, right? So I can look into that, though, but we didn't give the Brigance, so I can't do a straight across. However, I do, just again, trying to, be transparent here, I have pre-K teachers who prefer the half-day program. They feel like we touch more kids that way, there's more opportunity. If there's behaviors, they're not behaviors for 5 hours, the behaviors for 2.5 hours, and still giving students a chance to grow into school. And for English learners, my anecdotal experience is that full day is better, clearly. 5 hours a day immersed in the language. We are having fewer and fewer kindergartners qualify as English learners because they're testing out as proficient on the kindergarten placement test if they've been to pre-K, which is awesome. They're bypassing that program.
Dr. Austin, I was wondering, the growth that was shown by Boardwick is quite a bit higher than the other schools. Do you contribute that to anything in particular?
Well, just offhand, I would say the 2 teachers in the classroom and the 2 aides. So they have double the personnel, so more one-on-one time with the students, more face-to-face processing verbally with the students. We, again, I could go on and on about the money we lost. We tried to do that with the last 2 years' funding, in that we had a bilingual paraprofessional in each classroom. So that was a para 1, a bilingual para, and the teacher. So we had a team of 3, and we saw great strides with that. Of course, I need to get that data out to you to see if that bears out. But this year, we've had to downsize the number of paras, so we share the bilingual para between the 2 classrooms at the site. Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you for sharing this data with us. I think this is definitely amazing support that the school district is providing these children so that they can excel and do well in college. So thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a great program. I don't know, Dr. Lennox or Mrs. Fuson, any other comments? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
You
guys.
are
We
going to send
appreciate
this
it.
program, this slides to us?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. I'll correct that one slide with the Fremont count. Yes. Okay,
But also, thank you.
welcome.
And keep up the good work. We appreciate it. Moving on to number 8, adoption of CCSD test procedures and security plan for the 2019-2020 school year as required by NRS 390.275 for possible action. Mrs. Fuson.
Thank you, Tasha Fuson, for the record. The 2019-2020 Carson City School District Test Security Manual is designed for our district test coordinator, our site administrators, and our school test coordinators. It's important that our district employees understand and adhere to test security procedures related to state assessments. Strict adherence to the procedures protects the integrity of the state tests or the state assessment program and ensures that consistency in test administration and security of test materials and the validity of scores across our district. It's very important to note that there are no significant changes in the manual from this year as last year. We did a quick check against what the state put out and made sure all of our I's were dotted and T's were crossed, if you will, but there was no substantial changes at all. So upon approval, the 2019-2020 Carson City School District Test Security Plan will be submitted to the Legislative Council Bureau on the board's behalf. Are there any questions that I may answer from you?
Richard?
On this, does this cover the SBAC and the MAP testing, or just the SBAC testing procedures?
This encompasses all of the assessments that are required by the Department of Education in the state of Nevada. So MAP is covered, SBAC, ACT, administration, Brigance at the early childhood level. It encompasses all state-required assessments.
If a student misses the test, the testing date, and they have to do a makeup, how's that conducted?
So it depends on the individual assessment. For instance, like the ACT has a designated makeup test date. So if a junior is not in attendance at school on the day that it's administered, there is one specific date that they can take it that year, or they have to take it the following year in the senior year. For other assessments, there's a makeup test window. So it really depends on the specific assessment and what the guidance is from the Department of Ed on that.
What about MAP testing? If a student misses the MAP testing date?
So typically, there's a MAP testing window. So it depends on the individual site and the individual site's plan. So there's a window of opportunity, and then each individual site has to create their own test administration plan. The window is large enough that if a student is absent or sick, they should be able to do a makeup at that point in time.
Is the makeup for the MAP test given into the classroom, or are they removed to somewhere else?
So again, it would depend on the individual site. Each site has its own. So this is the district's manual that goes out to each of the sites. Each site has to come up with an individual plan. So it's hard to answer that with 10 different sites that are administering assessment. So it depends on the way that the individual site has set that up. For some sites, they take the students into a lab and they take the test in the lab. Some sites, they take the test on Chromebooks. So it depends on what the individual site has set up. But the window is what is determined by the state, that the assessments have to be given between a specific time frame.
Yeah, I think my concern was if a test is, say a MAP test is being given in the classroom, kind of disrupts the whole classroom setting because you got to be quiet for the kid taking the test. And then are we losing instructional time with the other children is what I was trying to get at, I guess. And so
It
I
could
don't know how that
happen, but I would
process
have to
works.
know exactly what school, and I'd have to ask specifically how that school has set it up. In most cases, I wouldn't think that they would do a makeup map assessment during regular instructional time because there is a test environment that is supposed to be maintained for students who are being assessed.
I'm just thinking, I think they pull them out and they do it in a separate computer lab room or something like that.
I'm not sure that's happening, but we can talk later.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion. I move that are you ready? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. A real minor thing, if you wanted to correct it, it's not a big thing, but on page 14, on the second bullet point, there's just a space between the lines, is all, about halfway down the paragraph.
Okay.
I just have a comma and an apostrophe that you can remove, but I'll give you a copy of it afterwards.
Okay.
Overall, though, I'd like to say I think it was a well-written document. I think it covers a lot of things, and it's pretty impressive, really. And my understanding is that this is followed by the staff.
Yes, actually, we have a test coordinators meeting coming up next week on the 5th. So this, all of the procedures will be gone over in that meeting with our test coordinators. And then it is required that our test coordinators go back and train the teachers. Actually, they do a big test proctor training. And then before each assessment, they're required to do a reminder training. So,
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the Carson City School District test procedures and test security plan for the 2019-2020 school year as submitted in accordance with NRS 390.275.
I'll second it.
Motion by Don, second by Richard. Any other discussion by the board? Any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck. And do thank Dr. Medina for us. It was a very good document. Moving on to number 9, informational update on student enrollment in the Carson City School District for the 2019-2020 to include discussion regarding anticipated future growth and capacity and the potential need for additional facilities. Mr. Fueling.
Good evening, Madam President and trustees. This evening, we'll be reviewing what we've seen so far for enrollment this school year, and then a little bit of history. I tried not to get too crazy with some of this. There's some graphs and pretty colors, so I'm sure you'll be enthralled. I'll say that this has not been the year I think any of us expected when we've been looking at some of these numbers. So it was pretty interesting to get into it. I'll also say that it is rather early in the school year, and what we've seen is that really after the first 2 weeks, you'll see some more solid numbers, and then once Labor Day is over, things really solidify. So it will definitely change over time, but still interesting to look at nonetheless. So we have day 6 data. So yesterday was day 6. We have the enrollment figures for the number of students enrolled as of yesterday. And so that it is an apples to apples comparison as much as it can be, I'm comparing day 6 data from last school year. So I don't know if that's entirely fair, but again, it varies quite a bit. There are days, I was looking at last year's data between day I think day 5 and day 6 enrollment increased by like 98 kids, right? So you can have these large jumps and so again, but this is, I think, the best that we can do at this point. So when looking at the elementary level grades K through 5, and I'm not including pre-K, glad Dr. Austin's not here, because pre-K has a defined number of seats, right? So it even if it's under, if they're at 120, it kind of, it doesn't, it matters as far as capacity within buildings, but as far as looking at this, I don't think it's really fair to look at those numbers, and we don't, we don't get funded in the same way. What they were speaking about with the insanity of the funding for pre-K, that is very real, and we all kind of suffered together through that. So anyway, so interesting with elementary and a reduction in the number of students. So not what we expected, not based on kindergarten or birth rates in Carson City over the last number of years, and growing developments across the city. It's just really interesting to see that. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. At the middle school level, we all know Carson Middle has a couple kids in it, and it continues to grow. Interestingly, we'll get to Eagle Valley. Eagle Valley actually lost some population this year, which again was unexpected. At the high school level, we are up a little bit. You may have heard that Carson High is up, but while Carson High is up, Pioneer is down. So they're balancing a little bit there. Any questions so far?
How many kids are at Carson Middle right now? If it's up,
I'm gonna
did they
show-
all go to Carson Middle?
I'm coming.
That's coming.
Yeah, actually, it's coming. That was another surprise.
Especially after last year.
Yeah. So, again, the day 6 numbers, you have to remember, are not great numbers in that you still, our folks are trying to give us kind of the true numbers of kids in the building, but within Infinite Campus, kids aren't dropped until they haven't showed up for 10 days. So sometimes there's kids here maybe that aren't really here, but then there's also kids who are still coming. So while with that said, again, just interesting. So Bordewick down 11, and Bordewick is the one school each year that adds the most kids during the school year. I would not be surprised if that number is 650 by the end of the year. They add a lot of kids. They add 30 to 40 kids every year during the school year. Empire down, which I was expecting, but not quite that much. So that was, again, unexpected. Fremont is up 48, but 25 of that is due to moving the CLS program from Seeliger. So Fremont overall really is up, but it's just a good portion of that is due to just moving our elementary CLS special education program from Seeliger to Fremont. Fritch is up a bit, which makes sense with all the development going on over there. So that was, I guess, expected in some ways. Mark Twain, not expected. That area, it's just really surprising to see a drop of that much. They had a large 5th grade class come out, smaller kindergarten class come in, but they lost some other kids along the way. So, and they have held strong in the upper 500s. And I should say these numbers are K-12. These are not including pre-K. So they have held strong in the upper 500s, low 600s since the last 5 years since I've been here. So that's a pretty big change for them.
I think a lot of that has to do with the housing, because a lot of houses have sold in our area, and the people that have sold them have kids, and the people moving in are retirees from California. So
I think there's a theme to that throughout all of this. And part of that is a lot of those young families with kids, they can't afford to buy some of the homes in Carson City anymore. And yeah, the rentals as well, yeah. Seeliger down, while the CLS program going away makes sense as a part of that, it amazes me that with that huge Schultz Ranch development, that they are actually down. I am, so on October 1st, we will have our official pull of student data, where then we have our company we work with that maps that all out for us. And I'm really interested to see how many kids we're pulling out of Schultz Ranch, because I think that's a really good bellwether for, because right now we think for every 100 new homes, we'll get about 30 kids. Well, if Schultz Ranch has built 200 homes and we've only gotten 10 kids out of that doesn't bode well for generating students around the rest of the city. So it's an interesting one to check. I think a lot of the Fritch development over kind of northwest of Silver Oak will be interesting to look at. And Empire now, they have that new apartment complex over there, and I'd like to see how many kids we're generating out of the apartment complex. So Carson Middle School is up about 63 kids. That's about 15 more than projected, and that's a lot of kids. Eagle Valley is down 32. So part of what you see at Empire fully feeds into Eagle Valley, so that kind of makes sense, but still a large class of Sealiger kids just went to Eagle Valley. And so it's surprising to see that they have gone down that much. Carson High is up 36. Pioneer High is down 31 from this time last year. So that's a pretty significant move. On a percentage basis, that's an enormous move down for Pioneer High School. Any questions on any of this? Okay. So this is looking across the district, not by school, but just by grade level. And there's two different ways to look at this. And again, it's the actual day 6 from 18-19 last school year, and then actual day 6 from 19-20 this school year. And you can just see the change by grade level, which is meaningful. But I think what's actually, to me, I look at quite a bit more meaningful is to the right. You have what they call the survival. In the kind of finance and enrollment world, they call it cohort survival. So you're looking at how kindergartners from one year move to first grade the next year, first grade 1 year moves to second grade. And so if you look at those numbers, you have some, I guess, a reasonable fluctuation in some, but some is really large and not really expected. Like the kindergarten to first 29, that's usually a year where you'll see a couple more kids come in, but to add 19 from second to third is kind of unusual. To add 31 from 56 is not, because you have a lot of kids coming out of the private schools that then enter the middle schools. Same thing from going from 8th to 9th. You expect some more for the same reasons. What I have to the right is this cohort survival average number. And all these mean they're just ratios. Basically, if it's over 1, on average in the last 3 years, going from kindergarten to first or first to second or second to third, we've added kids. If it's less than 1, it means that normally or on average, we've lost kids. And so you'll notice that the only grade level on average that we've lost kids is kids going from 11th to 12th grade. Every other grade, well, 3rd to 4th, right about 1. So it's just unusual to see some of these negative numbers in any other grades other than that 11th to 12th grade change. So again, that was a bit of a surprise. Any questions about that? So before I get into these next slides, I have 4 slides that kind of look at the replacement of students. So at the elementary level, the 5th grade class going out one year, and what's the kindergarten class that comes in the next year. Kind of the 6th thing for 6th and 8th at the middle school level, 9th and 12th at the high school level. And then kind of a district-wide shot of the replacement of the outgoing 12th grade class at Carson High, or at the high school level, and the incoming kindergartners district-wide. So on a larger district-wide basis of kids going out, kids coming in. I will say that there are projections in here. The projections have not been updated with any new numbers from this year. So anything you see past 2021 is based on projections that very much need to be updated. But at the same time, there's some truth in some of the patterns you'll see with this. So going back to, all these go back to 06, 07, so just prior to the recession hitting, and then project out. So the blue line in each given year is the number of kindergartners entering the Carson City School District, The blue line is the number of fifth graders from the prior year, okay? So if I'm looking at the 2006, 2007, let's say that far left, for the blue, you have about 570 kindergartners that came into the school district that year. In the red, the fifth grade that they replaced, that's actually the fifth graders from the prior year, right? Because they graduated up to sixth grade. So it's just, getting a feel for within the elementary level, what's that change over time. And you can see that in the last school years, last 4 or 5 school years, that the fifth grades that have been leaving have been well larger than the kindergarten classes that have come in. And if you look at the birth rates in Carson City and you go back 5 years prior to this, you'll see that the number of live births in Carson City really dropped. Got down into the low 500s. Whereas if you go back to like 2006, 2007, that time frame, we had almost, I think there were a couple years there were actually over 900 live births in Carson City. So that number significantly dropped. Now, obviously there's people moving to the community, which can make a difference, but just from the standpoint of how many kids are being born here, the chance that you'll capture some of them and they become kindergartners is a lot higher if you have 900 versus 500 births. For 6th to 8th grade replacement, I don't know if this is as meaningful in this conversation, but I just have the information, so I can't help myself. But you have the 6th grade is the purple, and the 8th grade being replaced is in the blue. So in the time frame of where we are kind of recently, you can see that the 6th grade classes coming in are much larger than the 8th grade classes going out. And you may have, that's what we're seeing, right? Carson Middle School is very full. Eagle Valley is full, but still this year is kind of strange because they lost kids, and I haven't quite figured that out yet. But as you go over time, those smaller elementary school classes, as they come through, you would have smaller 6th grade classes, and those 8th grade classes would then be moving on to the high school. So again, the projections out here, I still need to update some of that, but I think generally you get the idea of kind of what we would see, I think. 12th grade to 9th grade replacement. So it's interesting, and this graph always looks so crazy to me because you go back to this time period, you had a huge number of freshmen at Carson High School, or at the high school level, and a very low number of 12th graders. And I think it speaks volumes that these numbers stabilize over time. And I think a lot more 12th graders, kids making it to 12th grade, and getting much closer to that graduation than they were years and years ago. However, as you go out, so kind of where we are right now, it's actually been pretty stable replacement of the classes. But you'll notice the 9th grade classes just recently getting a little bit bigger than those 12th grade classes. And so you get out to these years and you have these large middle school populations we have right now, they start going into the high school. So you have these larger 9th grade classes replacing smaller 12th grade classes. I'll also say that these projections, they don't take into account, we had a company do a third-party study of our population and projections, and it doesn't take into account their data. This is based on all our own internal data at this time. I haven't updated it with any of their information yet either. So the last one is kind of more this overall district-wide look of the number of kindergartners coming in versus the 12th graders that are going out. And so you see over the last number of years that those kindergarten classes really, they've shrunk, and the 12th grade classes leaving are quite a bit bigger, usually about 50 kids bigger. So, and as those large classes move in from the middle school to the high school, those 12th grade classes will grow in size, so they're larger in size. But the kindergartners right now, because they're based off of live birth data, and we know what those numbers are over the last 5 years, it's trending up. It's just not trending up very quickly. So unless families are moving in, there's not going to be a lot of kindergartners. And again, going back to housing prices, can young families afford some of the homes around here? And so that it was interesting to kind of go through this exercise. That's all I have. So I'm not sure if there's any specific questions about this. Mr. Greeny?
I was just curious, do you ever look at job data as well? I don't know. I don't have any job data, but I always think there's a lot of growth. USA Parkway, Reno, not sure we're getting a lot of growth right in our area. And USA Parkway is a little far of a commute.
Sure. I have not recently looked at any job data as far as, I know unemployment in general in Nevada is very low. I think that's part of the reason we struggle as a district to find positions oftentimes with the vacancies, we're lower than the national average. But as far as trends within the job data, maybe the wages of families based on those types of jobs and that sort of thing, I haven't looked at that. That would be an interesting look based on what is growing in Carson City, right? Versus
I have meant Carson City job data compared to some of the growth that's going on.
But I think in Reno too, just you have, while I think their average housing price is slightly higher than Carson City, I think the range of options is better as far as the price range, the affordability price range, which I know that the city, when they're in their discussions and the supervisors and the planning commission, that's a topic that comes up quite a bit, is the affordability of housing.
I was just wondering, have you done any look at Lyon County to see if the Dayton schools are going up in population? I've been thinking houses are more affordable in Dayton, so maybe some of the people who work here are living out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any specific data from Lyon, but I have a good contact over there my counterpart over there that I could get some information. I know Fernley High School is becoming a problem very quickly because that area has grown so fast. But they have a lot of the same capital funding problems that we have, unfortunately. But that'd be interesting to see. That county's population is growing really quickly, and I think they're feeling those growing pains right now.
If you go back to the slide from the numbers that we have today in the buildings. So looking at these numbers, where are we going to have problems with capacity? And where do we look like we have to start looking at rezoning?
So the clear right now issue with capacity is Carson Middle School. Like that's problem number one, I think. In the near future, 2-3 years, I think the high school level, simply because those larger classes will be moving up there. At the elementary level, I have to go back, and again, I need to update some of my modeling, and once October 1st comes, October 1st is the day the last 3-4 years that I've pulled student data to have this company kind of do the mapping of all the students. And they do much more sophisticated projections than I do. They're looking at every individual development and talking to the city about the expected time for this development to build out and what types, getting into the home type. There's a lot that goes into it. They actually had I was expecting growth this year. They had even more projected growth because of the developments going on in town. They're able to do that sort of thing. So once we have the October 1st data, I think when they plug that in and reforecast, it's not going to show as much growth as it had in the past or with the past study. And I think that, as far as zoning and that sort of thing, it's going to depend. So, I would argue that Seeliger probably, I think, had more homes built in the last year than Fritch, although Fritch had quite a few, yet Seeliger lost kids. So why is that? And I mean, we'll be able to maybe pick apart some of those things. And there's a lot to learn there, but it is at the elementary level, I would say in the very near future, there's probably not as much of a capacity concern. I think we still, and what you have to remember, what's hard about the elementary level is that you have these required class sizes, right? So even though the numbers may be down, the school may be full with teachers and classrooms and kids, but because we have to keep under 22 or 25 kids, you may have classes of, say, 19 and 20 versus 22, 23, 24 kind of bursting at the elementary kind of extreme. So it's kind of a different look at that, whereas when you're looking at the middle school or high school level, well, clearly we don't want to have classes of 50. You theoretically could, because there's no restriction on it. I don't want to say that we're doing that, and I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have brought that up, but just the idea of it. So I mean, for example, Boardwick Bray 602, they lost kids. Every classroom in that building is full with a teacher. Mark Twain is going to be the same thing. Fremont is going to be the same thing. Fritch, I know, is the same thing. I think Seeliger is the same thing. I'm not sure. That was a big drop, so I have to look at that one. And Empire, I'm not sure. But those other schools would still be full with teachers and kids, but just not maxed out as far as their class size capability. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
I was just curious, Boardwick Bray, and maybe I'm mistaken, but doesn't that have the smallest square footage of any of the other elementary schools?
It has the second smallest lot. Empire is slightly smaller as far as the area of the lot. I don't know. I would have to look at that. I'm not sure. I think Empire has the biggest. Empire and Seeliger, I think, have the biggest square footage. Fremont and Mark Twain are basically the same. I think Fritch might be a little bit smaller square footage wise than Boardwick. I think that might be the exception.
I'm just curious about Boardwick Bray. You said they used to pick up 30 to 40 more students during the year.
Yeah.
So that's going to put them at 630, 640.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that may be something we have to look at before long, because they can't take a whole lot more than that, I don't think.
Right. Well, what we have to watch is what are the actual class sizes that are in there right now. So if Boardwick has more teachers than any other school, they basically have 5 per grade level, and no other school really has that. And so depending on the class size, if you, let's say the class size max is 25 and you have 5, we're in 5th grade, we have 5 5th grades and they all have 22 kids. Well, 5th grade could still add 15 kids to get up so that every classroom would have 25 kids. So it depends on the grade level and what their max is and how much room there is. But if you got 30 kids all in one grade level, we'd be in trouble. Yeah, we'd have to figure something out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. And like you said, October 1st, you'll have more numbers and we'll look at it again. So we have some idea, but as you can tell, we're definitely going to have to do something and do it soon. So I want everybody to be ready for that. Moving on to number 10. Informational update on the progress made towards the inspections and study of the property located at 1600 Snyder Avenue, Carson City, Nevada, for discussion only. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It's been a busy week, and happy to share with you some of the work that's being done with regard to the feasibility study that is part of the 1600 Snyder Avenue properties. Like for you to know that the appraisal has been started. We've also given the folks who will be doing a phase 1 environmental study the green light to go ahead and begin moving on that. And we're grateful to the folks from NNDA. They received a grant, which we believe that particular process will be funded completely. Mr. Darren Berger is here in the office, in the meeting with us tonight, and Mr. Berger has been named as an architect to help us put together some of the fundamental drawings and conceptual pieces for the property. On August the 22nd, there was a meeting where we met a number of construction experts out at the property. We had engineers, individuals there representing the fire suppression industry, materials experts. Mr. Berger was there. We had plumbing and electrical folks there. And they did a walkthrough and essentially began some of the work of doing that, reporting out as to the soundness of the building. And so we went through the calendar with those individuals so that they know what we are looking at in terms of being able to come back and to report that information back to the trustees. So that process has begun. I've also contacted 10 individuals who are both parents in our community and also a few school staff members who will be working with me directly in a superintendent's committee to discuss the potential uses for the property. We are going to be starting those meetings on the evening of September the 4th, and then we will meet each consecutive Wednesday through the month of September. So we'll have meetings on the 4th of September, the 11th, and the 18th. We'll begin at 6 p.m. and go until 7:30 p.m., and that will be at the district office boardroom. Then on September the 19th, we have a bond oversight committee. So some of that work will be presented at that particular meeting. And then on the 25th of September, we'll also have our first community PLC, which will be used to also gain information from our community members and to also discuss the work that has been done by the Citizens Committee. I'd like to just say to the trustees, you are welcome to attend those meetings. I've let that committee know that that committee is advisory only, that they won't be setting any policy. That's the expectation of the board to do that. We will post on all of our agendas that even if we do have a majority of board members there will be no action taken. So you could feel free to come, just like with the bond oversight committees and some of the other committees that we've held, that you could attend and not worry about open meeting law violations. In addition, with regard to gathering public input, I've discussed with our public information officer and also our director of technology a way to put a little survey on our webpage, And the goal there would be to advertise that well so that, again, we could take input from the community as to what their ideas might be on how to use the property at 1600 Snyder Avenue. Mr. Pavlakis has helped put together a purchase agreement. That's a requirement of the letter of intent. We need to just chat about that a little bit more, but I appreciate his efforts in helping us. And then I also wanted you folks to know that I've contacted the director of the BLM right next, just to the west, adjacent to that property out there. There's another 5 acres that's owned by the BLM. And I just want to find out as much as I can how much that might cost us if we were interested in obtaining that property and what the process is in going about to obtain that. As President Wilkie has mentioned, we're at an interesting place. We're still trying to understand the dynamics of how growth is happening in the community this year. But I think it's important that we look down the road, that we try to see a bigger picture, that we try to prepare for what might come in the future. And I'm not saying that this is the only way, but I think the timing is right for us to consider the different options that might avail themselves to the school district and have an opportunity to come back and discuss that openly with members of the community and also with the trustees. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about the progress that we're making with regard to the feasibility study.
Joe?
Richard, just curious on the appraisal and the phase 1 as well. Did the consultants we used for that indicate they would have any issue with our timeframes?
I know the appraiser said that it might be challenging for him to do that. One of the things that might be a blessing in disguise was just that little 3-week period of time between board meetings that he already knew about it and was thinking about it and was taking some efforts towards. So I think we actually gained a little time there towards having that maybe completed in a timely manner that we need it to be for the letter of intent. But remember, we also have 90 additional days as long as we've done our due diligence, and I hope we can show that we are in a good place for that end.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Nobody else? Okay.
Glad we're moving forward.
Mr. Berger, do you have anything to add to the conversation, as long as you've been here the whole meeting? Anything you want to say? We're looking forward to it. This isn't your first time working with us, and we appreciate you having that background so you know what we're looking for and what we've done in the past, and Pioneer turned out beautifully, so.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You get to come up to the mic.
So for the record, my name's Darren Berger. I'm an architect here in town. Nobody asked me to be here. I'm just, as Mr. Stokes is realizing, I'm a little bit over enthusiastic about being involved. I was born and raised here. I have kids that go to school here. So this is near and dear to my heart, and just wanted to get in front of you guys so you had a face, so you knew who your architect was. And I'm very much looking forward to being involved and very excited about the opportunities that this has for the district, and just thrilled to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your participation on a lot of our committees too that you've done throughout the years too. This isn't your first time on that either. So anybody have any questions for Mr. Berger? Richard?
I'd just like to say, Mrs. Stokes, thank you for all your work on this. You're moving pretty rapidly, it sounds like, and just thank you. And looking forward to seeing how it all turns out, and hopefully it'll be in a real positive light and for the community.
Thank you, Trustee Varner. I can say that while we had that little event on the 22nd where we had these construction individuals walking through the building, they were all very complimentary as to how well the building had been maintained. They were impressed with the types of things that were in the building. There were some things, obviously, that they said, we'll take note of that. But truly, I think it is something that, not so much that property, but just the time that we're living in, looking down the road for education in the future, thinking about, just what's happening in town, and trying to make sure that we take care of the educational needs in town into the future. And I don't think anybody could ask more of that, more than that.
I think we'll have some great discussions that come out of the Citizens Committee. It could kind of be like the EDU 101 class. You might find out that this is a great fit, and we might find out that it's not a great fit, but we won't have to spend any more time on it either. But maybe we'll come up with even better solutions for other things too. So we appreciate both your time, and we'll go forward with it. Thank you. Moving on to number 11, approval of consent agenda for possible action.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Joe, second by Laurel. Any discussion on the motion? Any public comment? I will not be voting on this issue because I have a pecuniary interest in number A. So with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Moving to number 12, informational items. There's quite a few things going on. If you have any questions, please ask Renee or Mr. Stokes. Do you set your calendar for that? The Bond Oversight Committee meeting is the 19th and that PLC is the 25th. I think it's real important for all of us to try to be there for that because of the discussion that we've had tonight. Any questions, comments? Moving on to number 13, request for future agenda topics. Okay. Moving on to 14, I call for adjournment. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.